Hello everybody and welcome back to another Unreal Engine tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at enhanced inputs, how to add them to your character, how to modify them, and how to update them in C++ side will be the second part of this video. Now, enhanced inputs has left quite a lot of the community in a bit of a mixed feelings mode because originally, when you wanted to add inputs, you come to project settings, you came down to input, and then you would add your inputs, action mappings here, and it just was nice, clean, simple, and easy to use. However, this is no longer the case, and by default, you are now using the enhanced one. It does allow a lot more flexibility. It does allow an awful lot more options. You can unbind and bind and rebind, whole templates. But a lot of people don't like it because it's overcomplicated. Now, I'm just going to go through the basics. What you have here, this is the first person template, and they have kindly set this up for you, is you have these data assets which are input actions. Now if we take a look at this one, for example, move, let's bring you across because you opened on the screen, and then you have your different types, whether it's a boolean, a float, vector, 2D, or a vector 2D for the move, because you have, for example, W, S, A, and D. That is going to be a +1, -1 on the X and Y axes. We also have the option whether the input gets consumed, and various things like modifiers and triggers, whether we're holding down specific items or not. So it does come with an awful lot of options. But for, simplicity, let's have a look at jump here. See, jump is just a bool, which is kind of, indicative to most keys, like a spacebar or something. So we can add a new one. And what we have here is this new input menu, and you can choose input action. And I'm just going to call this something. And what we have here is that's going to be set to a bool, and it's going to consume generally for just a single key press. That is all you need to do in here. Now, how do we assign a key to that? Well, we have these input mapping contexts. Now here you can see we have a default one, which has our jump, move, and look, and then our weapons one here, which has our shoot. Now, why are these two separate? These two are separate in the first person template because when you start the game, you do not have a weapon. You cannot shoot anything. And what they've done is allowed you to see how to add and remove your inputs in dynamically in game, which is really useful. I have used it myself. It's not that complicated, but what I've done is, for example, I've had like a player that's wandering around, so I have one of these for the player, and then they can get into a little spaceship and fly around, so I have a completely different one for that, but sort of mapped to the same actions, and basically I just swap between the two. Now this default is here, so you can see that they have added the keys, and you see here this is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. For WS, you knew that was a vector 2D, and then we have this negate option. Now what this is the equivalent of, if I go to the project settings, come back to the input in the old method, is your scale. Negate would be -1, equivalent of. And that just means that it's going to be the negative of W. So if you're going forward, that will be a positive, and then you negate it to be negative. It's a little bit more complicated overall, but nothing that us programmers can't deal with. So how do we add a new one? Mappings, add your new one, select the one that we've just done. This is our mapping, and then let's put this on E. We don't need to do anything else in here. That is it. If we wanted to put it in here so it's only available when we pick up a weapon, we can do that here. But I can show you how to add and remove these anyway. It's not too bad. So if we come into our first person character, how do we assign our input tree to our character? We should have a default mapping context. And here is where you can choose your default context for your character when you first load into the game. I have some extra stuff here, but that is more tied to the C++ stuff. So you can ignore that if you're using blueprints, because you'll probably only have this on its own. How do we utilize that? Well, in our character here, let's add if we just type IA underscore, you can see all the inputs that we have. Here is our event for our something that we created. This is why you follow the naming convention, really, because if you put IA underscore, at least you can find it. And then we have our triggered, started, ongoing, cancelled, completed, and then our action values. Given that we are only dealing with a key press, we can just come in here and just say print string, and then when we come in here, you can see we've got our thing. This is triggered. It caters for quite a lot. Generally, I think I tend to use more started, because then that only fires off once. So no matter how many times I hold that down, that's not going to do it, and then that's just doing once there. Ongoing and cancel, if you're doing a game where you have like a fire mechanism, you can have it as triggered, or something that's started if you want an initial animation, and then if it's held down you can have additional ones, and then you can complete it. Or if you right click to cancel or something, then you have the full options here for all your inputs. As I said, this makes it slightly different from the original, but of course if you just want to hack your way through it and you want to hard code keys, you can of course just hard code keys here, and let's just say M, and then you've got pressed and released. If you're not planning on allowing people to rebind keys, then you could probably just go down this route, or you could come back in here and you can switch out this back to player input and then just use this. I imagine this will probably be deprecated at some point, so don't heavily rely on that. But if you're sticking to the same Unreal Engine version, then you can probably work with that. So what else have we got? The C++ side of things here. We can see in here we have our default mapping context added here. We have a jump and a move and a look action here. These are how we define those items over here: jump, move, look. And that allows you to associate an IA action in the editor and store it in C++. What that does is when we come down to our binding, we can grab our enhanced input, we can bind that action to a particular event, whether it's triggered or completing, and then we can bind a function like these to that action. And that's how we do the binding in C++. To change context, you've got here in the begin play, we had our default mapping context, which is up here. This is then bound to our player's input system. To remove the context, it would just be the same thing. Remove mapping context, and then just default mapping context, and then that would remove it, and then you wouldn't be able to move, but you'd have to rebind a new context in order to utilize that. And this is exactly what happens on the weapon component. Is when it gets attached here, we grab the player controller, we grab the context, and then we add that fire mapping context that we had, and then we bind the action fire to the function fire, which is up here. So that is how you would then bind, unbind context. That's how you would assign functions to specific actions in C++, along with binding these actions in here. It's not complicated for the basic stuff, but if you want advanced stuff, that is sort of where complexity comes in. For example, I've got triggered in here. I have got 3 of these for firing in my own project for started, ongoing, and completed, and it can get a little bit, full in here. But rebinding these things, that is done in here, and that is down to remapping keys to get your mapping context. So get default mapping context here, and then you can get mappings. This is an array, so you have to loop over all of these, and then you get this, our mapping context here, and we can say unmap key, and the action would be our action, and our key would be our key here, and that's going to unmap the key. And then we can map it to map key for our action, and then whatever key you want. It's a little bit irritating to do all this because you have to loop over stuff, but you can in the UI use the input selector, which is basically this component here, but in UI Blueprint widgets. And then you can use the value of that to get the key and then set the key from here. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated to remap, but this is sort of like how you would actually remap your context. That is going to be it, guys. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you next time. I hope this has helped anybody. If you have any questions, then feel free to leave some comments down below, and I will see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.